Hello, my cubs, and welcome back to another episode of the Bear Bar Tales. It is I, the one bear brave enough to admit he plays games on easy mode. I ain't got time to play. I'm not about to spend all that time dying over and over. The Bear Bard. See, I told you I'd get back to a regular schedule. No one believed, but I did it. That is, unless this comes out a week late and I look really foolish right now. So I guess if that does happen, I guess I'm the one bear brave enough to admit when he's made a mistake and leave in his mistake. Regardless, today we have a story that hits a bit closer to home for me. Not because I've had to deal with a person like this, but because it deals with a group of friends trying to schedule and play a game of D&D in their 30s, around families. It also involves reevaluating whether a friend is truly a friend, which is never easy but incredibly important. Now, before we get started, if you like this type of content and you want to hear more from the Bear Bard, make sure to just lightly caress that like button and give the channel a sub. Every sub I get gets me one step closer to funding an expedition to El Dorado, the lost city of gold, where I will become rich enough to spend money on excessively expensive things, like a gold statue of myself, or my medical bills. But enough of all that, let's get to today's story titled 20 Years of Friendship Ends Over My Bedtime. The TLDR is literally the title. Warning, this is a long one, but if you want to find out how this shit went down, read on. I played a druid in my first and last campaign with two longtime friends. Cleric, who was one of my best friends since college, and the DM, whom I was friends with for several years and was Cleric's best friend. The rest of the party was a paladin, a rogue, and a bard, all of us in our 30s. Our campaign was supposed to be just for fun, according to our DM and Cleric. Our session started once every 2 weeks at 8 p.m. Cleric had to get his kids to bed, so he said he couldn't start any earlier than 9, and the party obliged. The end of the session was not specified, but generally went to 11 or midnight. Me being in my late 30s, I'm not recovering from these late nights as easily as I did when I was younger. Even though it's bi-weekly, I get to bed early, and honestly, 2 hours of D&D is more than enough D&D for me in a session. Now, a little necessary backstory about myself. I've been a people pleaser my entire life. So of course I don't say anything about the late nights bothering me initially. I've got anxiety, anger, and resentment issues. See the Disney movies Tangled and Encanto, minus the happy endings for the references of why I'm like this. Anyway, my therapist says that I lack boundaries. After I learned what a boundary is, I decided to set one for myself. That is, I'm done playing D&D at 10 p.m. I'm pretty happy that I got such an easy boundary as my first time setting one. So a day before our session, I'll let everyone in our D&D chat know. Me. Just a quick heads up. I'm going to a limit of 10 p.m. for myself for all future D&D sessions. Cleric. Okay, why is that? Me. I'm not getting enough sleep, and I feel like shit the next day, and spend the rest of the weekend playing catch-up. No one in the group has a problem with this, except Cleric. He keeps mentioning that he doesn't think 2 hours is enough time to do anything. Finally, he says, I'm finding it difficult to sympathize as I try to accommodate everyone to be here at 8. Even though I'm scrambling with putting kids to bed, and I'm not able to catch up on sleep because I'm routinely woken up at 6 a.m. and then chasing kids around all day. Translation, you don't have problems, try being a parent. I asked him what his deal was. Cleric, because you just said this is what I'm doing. Boom, end of discussion. You didn't discuss it with me or the group at all. You just did it. Me. It sounds like you're suggesting that unless the group decides that my reasons for leaving is valid, that I'm being inconsiderate. This devolves into an argument, which Bard quickly diffuses and suggests we talk about it over voice chat at the next session. The voice chat happens, and Cleric is still pissed that I didn't consult the group about leaving. Me. I want to go to bed or just stop playing. You guys can do whatever you want. Cleric. You're ending the game early before the group is done playing. See, after I decided on 10 p.m. for myself, Paladin and Rogue thought it was a good idea and decided 2 hours was enough D&D for them as well. Cleric now sees me as some kind of ringleader who turned Paladin and Rogue against the rest of the group. The argument continues with Cleric pushing me. Cleric, why this particular boundary? Me, because it's my bedtime. I get to choose when that is. Cleric, yes, but why now? Why are you so fixated on this particular boundary? Why do you feel you need it so badly? Can you imagine the audacity? Can you imagine getting mad at someone because they want to go to bed at 10 o'clock at night? I mean, this guy really took OP's personal decision to get better sleep, which good on you, OP. Lord knows I can't make that decision. As an attack on him. You need to consult with the group. I mean, what are you going to do? Tell him no? I feel bad because you get the vibe that this guy's more mad that OP is pushing back as opposed to the bedtime thing. Also, as a parent, I freaking hate when parents do this. I mean, yes, having kids is tough and something non-parents don't understand. But to act like just because you don't have kids, you don't have struggles is just stupid. Your decision to have kids isn't their fault, and so it's not on them to deal with it. At this point, I'm speaking as calmly as I can, while internally I am freaking out so much that my hands are shaking. I explain that in the past I've always just gone with the flow and done whatever everyone else wanted, as opposed to checking with myself to see what I wanted to do. Just be a follower. As long as the group is happy, it's all good. I'm now trying to be more authentic and transparent in my relationships. And that means, as just one example, if I don't want to do something, I state that I don't intend to do it. I try to reassure Cleric, this isn't about you. It's about me changing my past unhealthy behavior. Both DM and Bard just try to appease Cleric and not rock the boat. Cleric isn't backing down on this, and the longer it goes, the more angry he becomes, and I'm getting pissed too. At one point he says, "What about me? Why don't I get my needs met?" I know I changed his voice for that last line, but I couldn't imagine reading that line in any other voice. The chat ends with nothing being solved. A couple days pass without me talking to Cleric at all, which I'm fine with. Then I send a message to reach out, which goes, me. Hey, just checking in. Wondering if you want to come over face to face and kind of chat and clear the air on all this. Cleric, yeah, I would like that. I've also written some stuff out, just processing my thoughts and feelings. Do you think it would help at all if I just sent it? Just so you can see where my head's at? Me. Sure. If you want me to take a look at it, I'll read it. Couple hours later, he sends me a 2-page text document of the most batshit insane stuff I've ever read. He starts with the title, The Facts So Far, then itemizes every talking point we've previously had, complete with quoted conversations and dates to mark exactly what took place and when. He then writes a blurb about his thoughts and feelings about each thing I said or did. All of his conclusions were warped and twisted. Like, remember when I tried to explain to Cleric my past unhealthy behavior? This was twisted into, Druid's comments imply to me that all the scales are uneven, and all of the times that I have given in to hit this relationship somehow aren't enough. I also interpreted this to mean that all that I give in this relationship is not even worth 1 hour of time, and that hurts me the most. It really starts getting crazy when he shares his thoughts on relationships. He nutshells them as energy in and energy out. See, Cleric keeps track of the amount of energy he puts into every relationship versus the amount of energy he gets in return. If he feels he's giving more relationship than he is receiving, he pulls back from the relationship until the other person makes up what they owe. He seems to put relationships in a hierarchy, parents at the top and single childless people at the bottom. Because he is a parent, in his mind, he's already giving as much as he can, and since his responsibilities are so taxing or unavoidable, every non-parent friend should accommodate him simply because they are able to. He then accuses me of never truly accepting his decision to become a parent, ending the letter with, maybe it was inevitable with my choice to have a family. I wish nothing was changing, but I have to accept the facts that as others change the way they act and the energy they devote, I need to understand and align with the efforts others are putting into the relationship. My jaw hit the floor at this point. I honestly have no idea what to say. The ego, the martyrdom, the f***ing entitlement. Him pulling back from a relationship to get the other person to prove they care about him strikes me as emotionally manipulative and childish. I don't really respond other than thanking Cleric for being honest and that we'll talk about it more at our meeting. Somehow, I convince myself that he'll be more reasonable. Yeah, I know, my own stupidity impresses me sometimes. The day arrives and I'm panicking. I have a habit of throwing myself into reverse whenever people are upset with me. Sorry, yep, I was totally in the wrong. I was having a bad day. I don't know why I even thought that, etc. Only to beat myself up about it later for not standing up for myself. I remind myself what this is all about. When I'm allowed to go to bed or stop playing D&D, and there's no way that I can see, another person has the right to dictate or demand compromise of somebody else's autonomy. So I make a statement that is so concrete that I can't backpedal from it, or I'll look like a complete moron, which goes something like this. Cleric, this conversation I think has been a long time coming. Me, okay, before we start, I need you to understand, I did nothing wrong. I have nothing to apologize for, and I have nothing to be forgiven for. He didn't like that. In retrospect, I think he went into this meeting completely sure that I would apologize and just fall in line, like I had in the past. Instead, I pointed to the letter he sent me and referred to it as a friendship audit and accused him of treating me like an employee going through a performance review. I tell him the letter described a transactional relationship. He disagrees and says that's how relationships are. It's give and take. And that in a friendship, two people owe each other. I have no idea what that last part means, but just a tip for anyone reading this, don't enter into any relationships where scorekeeping is a thing. So I want to start here by saying that I am in no means a therapist. Nothing I say here should be taken as substitute for therapy. I'm just some dude on the internet reading horror stories and pretending to be a bear, so Lord knows I have my own things. That being said, this is such an unhealthy way to view people around you. But what makes it worse is that it's rooted in a solid foundation. Every relationship does have some give and take, and sometimes you really do need to evaluate how much you're putting in versus how much you get out of it. But, and this is a triple C thick size but, relationships aren't quantifiable. And so these evaluations of give and take aren't black and white. Not every relationship will feel even. Every person is so different that what feels like low effort or low amount of energy going in for one person could feel like a mountain for others. A quick example. Two friends go to a party together, one introverted, one extroverted. For the extrovert, this may not even feel like an activity that requires any effort, whereas the introvert was stressing about this for the last week to the point of keeping them up at night. There's a good chance they didn't even want to go to this, but are going as support for their friend. How do you quantify this? How do you judge it? Then to adjust how much effort you put in going forward based off these imagined numbers is just insane. With any relationship, you appreciate the person for who they are and how they make you feel. You put in the amount of effort you're comfortable with and take from them what you're both comfortable with. Do you enjoy your time with them? Do you enjoy them? These are the things you need to look at, not some made-up quantifiable numbers that don't exist. Not to get too ranty, but at this point, it's clearly not about the hour. This guy doesn't like taking pushback from a guy he's probably been walking over for years. He's mad that in his daily routine, he has all this extra work with kids and family. Then when he doesn't get his way in a situation where he feels like he should have power, he loses it. Remember to take all this with some presumption thrown in there. I tell him I was still pissed that he belittled me in our text chat by putting my reasons in quotes and comparing them to being a parent. He sees no problem with his actions, doesn't apologize, and pretty much says he doesn't understand why I'm making a big deal out of it because I have so much more free time than he does. He then complains about his needs and once again, what about what I want? What about my needs? Again, I can't read that in the same voice I did before. And I gotta say, this is coming from a man whose parents paid his way through college, has a high 5 or low 6-figure salary in his mid-30s, owns a home in the suburbs that he paid off before the age of 40, and I know this because he bragged about it on social media, and has a wife and 2 kids, basically the American dream. And he's complaining about 1 fucking hour of my time? Things continue to devolve. The best part is when I tried to explain to Cleric that he did get his needs met. Me. Cleric, you keep saying that no one is accommodating you, but the group already did. You told us you can't play any earlier than 8 p.m. because of your kids. We all agreed. That's us accommodating you. That's us meeting your needs, not the other way around. Cleric, no, because first I had to get Mrs. Cleric to agree to our sessions. Then I'm trying to get my kids to bed, which is difficult and hard on me sometimes. And if they wake up during our sessions, Mrs. Cleric has to handle them by herself. That's us giving to you guys. So now I'm indebted to his wife too? I forget what happened to cause this, but the conversation takes a weird turn, and then he starts to talk all about his responsibilities at home. Stress from kids and Mrs. Cleric. Then he says, I haven't really thought about the transition from college student to family man. Just for context, our college graduation was over a decade ago. And that's when it hit me. D&D was never about fun for him. It was all about escaping. He has everything he wants out of life and he's still unhappy and has no idea why. I see a man who had an idea of what marriage and family life would be like, but the reality isn't what he expected or wanted. He's in the middle of a midlife crisis and expects the D&D party to be his emotional and mental life preserver. The argument also brought up a lot of issues I had with Cleric in the past that I'd ignored or buried. I won't go into specifics, but back in college, I would complain and talk shit about him behind his back constantly. I would get so angry and frustrated with him. I stopped because I told myself, a good friend accepts the bad parts of their friends, not just the parts they like. Now, I really can't think of any good points about Cleric. In college, it didn't occur to me that I just never liked him in the first place. But here I am, 20 years later, and my eyes are wide open. Cleric has always been like this from when we first met. Entitled, narcissistic, self-pitying. He seems to purposely surround himself with people who have submissive personalities to feel in charge of the friend group. At the end of our argument, Cleric tells me that he doesn't understand my need to have this boundary, but that he will accept it. However, he does so with the most bitter and resentful look I've ever seen him give. To me, he looked like an angry little kid who wasn't getting his way, and I could see this bullshit resolve at the edges of his expression. He saw himself as being gracious and selfless at that moment, a good friend, which honestly sickened me. After that, I played a few more sessions, but it was empty. I couldn't get over that look and the fact that he clearly didn't respect me, so I left. I told the DM, remember Cleric's best friend, about why I was leaving. DM was my friend too. I found out that the Cleric had already talked to him beforehand. DM said that he understood the gist of our issues without asking me my side of the story. Then he tells me that relationships are about compromise and that it's not about one side winning or the other side losing. Both sides win, both sides lose. The entire exchange came off as condescending dad talk. Looking back, I don't lament the end of these friendships. I'm focused on bettering myself, exploring my interests, and enriching my life. It's funny how many stories that I've read about friendships ending over D&D. It makes me think that it might be the truest test of a healthy friendship. I still like the game. Paladin is taking a stab at being DM and is planning a smaller campaign with just me and Rogue. I'm really looking forward to it. Heavy. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I want to reiterate that I'm not a therapist, but I have an opinion and a YouTube channel, so here we go. I think the real issue was touched on by OP here. The guy doesn't want a family, or at least the responsibilities that come with it. As someone with a wife and son, it is a lot of work. Look how poor my release schedule's been recently for evidence of that. I think we have this idea that these things will automatically bring happiness, that it's what we have to do, go to school, find a partner, marry, and have kids. For some people, this is what they want. I didn't get to go to school, but I wouldn't trade my family for anything in this world. It's my source that keeps me going and wanting to improve. But I have to commit a lot to do it. If you're not willing to do that, then don't. It's okay if your life doesn't go in that direction. But once you're there, it's on you. You can't expect others to compensate for your choices. Now, is it nice if people are understanding and work with you? Absolutely, but it's not their responsibility. This guy's at a weird point where he still wants to go out and do the things he used to. In this case, he clearly thinks back to his college days. This is a trap a lot of people fall into. They miss being younger with less responsibilities. They miss the freedom and ability to leave at 2 a.m. to get some White Castle burgers and end up meeting Neil Patrick Harris. They get lost in the memories of what used to be instead of appreciating what's in front of them for what it is. It's different, but it can also be amazing. The biggest problem here is that instead of dealing with these feelings in a healthy way, or being like most men and internalizing it until they die of heart disease at 50, he takes it out on OP. Now, it sounds like he isn't the greatest guy anyway. Douchey dude who grew up not wanting for anything. But it doesn't mean it's too late for him to turn it around. As a side note here, never talk crap about your friends behind their back. Either they're bad friends and you should just get away, or you're the bad friend and you need to reevaluate. Either way, you should always gas up your friends when they're not around. Then talk shit to their faces. A couple final notes. Boundaries are always healthy. Don't let people lower your standards. You are worth those standards. And try to appreciate what you have in front of you. You're in charge of your own happiness. If you don't think there's anything around you to appreciate, I promise you're wrong. If nothing else, appreciate the people that appreciate you. They're out there, even if you don't feel like they are. But on to happier memories. I'm going to dedicate these next few segments of the Bearbard's Cave of Art and Wonders to our first community event that we ran between myself and some of the other D&D horror story narrators. This first event was a fan fiction contest where people wrote a short fanfic that involved one or more of the creators, and we read them live on Discord. Without any context, here are a few drawings made by Discord user Ani, who apparently draws at a ridiculous speed. This first image being when I showed up late to the big scheduled event. As per law, I had to bust through the wall Kool-Aid Man style. Oh yeah! The second one was when Crow, for some reason, had to go to work, so we improvised by having Nova read his lines, but just by sounding like a regular Crow. She also did this while on the phone, bringing groceries inside because she's a trooper. And finally, if I'm being honest, there's far too much chaos here to truly get into words. But suffice it to say, Artificial DM is 1000% done with all of us in our femboid versions. The event was a ton of fun, and we had some awesome submissions. We actually plan on having more events in the future, and even have one going on now. So if you want to be a part of it, then I'll leave an invite to the event Discord server below. But for now, Bearfax. The West Mexican black bear, or Ursus mechanicus machetes, is one of only 3 subspecies found in Mexico. They're a medium-sized bear who on all fours measures about 3 feet to the shoulder. These bears can be found in north-central Mexico. Unfortunately, there's not a lot on these bears. They're the only black bear in all of North America that is endangered, and there doesn't seem to be much going on about it. Hunting them was outlawed, but no one seems to be stopping the poachers in the area, and there are so few of them that finding pictures of them was actually really tough. They seem to be an interesting subspecies that mainly survive on acorns, pine nuts, and roots. I hope people can show these bears some love before we lose them. Not to end on a bummer, but I think that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank all of you for sticking with me till the end. I also want to give a quick shout out to Drake, who also wrote a script for this same story and was about to jump in the booth at the same time I was, when he realized I was covering it as well. So he hit me up and changed to a different story. Make sure to go check out his video this week and tell him how much better his story is. If you like what you heard today, make sure to give my channel a sub. If you want to help support the channel further, you can look into my Ko-Fi, where you can sign up for a membership or a one-time tip. If you want to check out the Bear Bard in other forms, you can check out my Discord, Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also check out the Bear Bard Tales podcast, available pretty much anywhere. Before we go, I want to give a quick shout out to my Ko-Fi subscribers. At the Bear tier, we have the fantastic Armandeus. At the Mossy tier, we have the fabulous Nova and the distinguished Reuven Gritters. We also have a one-time tip made by Mr. Hypocritical. Thank you all for the support. It motivates me more than you know. Remember to stay kind, stay beautiful, and keep on living that bard life.